you had asked me, 5 years ago, I'd be like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to retire. But I definitely think that with my change in mindset and resources that I've learned through your podcast and others in your book, I think it's doable now.
T-minus 10 seconds.
Welcome to the Journey to Launch podcast with your host, Jamila Souffrant. As a money expert who walks her talk, she helps brave journeyers like you get out of debt, save, invest, and build real wealth. Join her on the journey to launch to financial freedom in
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
If you want the episode show notes for this episode, go to journeytolaunch.com or click the description of wherever you're listening to this episode. In the show notes, you'll get the transcribed version of the conversation, the links that we mentioned, and so much more. Also, whether you are an OG journeyer or brand new to the podcast, I've created a free jumpstart guide to help you on your financial freedom journey. It includes the top episodes to listen to, stages to go through to reach financial freedom, resources, and so much more. You can go to journeytolaunch.com/jumpstart to get your guide right now. Okay, let's hop into the episode. Hey, journeyers. Welcome to the Journey to Launch podcast. Today, I am bringing on a fellow journeyer. So in case you're not aware, I call journeyers anyone who listens to this podcast who is on the journey with me to financial independence. And today we have on Christina Cates. She is a physician's assistant in pediatric surgery in Florida. And after starting her career as a dietitian, Christina pivoted, doubling her income to setting her sights on achieving financial independence and switching careers. She discovered FI, financial independence, back in 2023 and is currently in debt payoff mode, working towards an FI goal of $1.5 million. And she is on the podcast to share her journey, to share her insights, and hopefully nuggets of information that will help other journeyers on their path. So welcome to the show, Christina.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so just like a quick aside. So I wanted to reach out and talk to real journeyers on the podcast again, because I remember when I first started back in 2017, when the podcast first launched, I got an opportunity to really talk to just more everyday people. And if you go back into the archives of the podcast, you'll hear that. And I love that about the show. I love that about the podcast, because it wasn't just talking to experts or talking to people who had books or who have achieved everything yet. It was just like, you know what, let's just be real and talk to each other, especially because I was so early on in my journey. I found that really beneficial and really beneficial to the audience. And so I was like, let me tap into current listeners and see who wants to come on and share their story. And so that's kind of how you're probably in the next few episodes hear more journeyer profiles and stories of people in the thick of it, still on their journey, which I hope will be helpful to you, the journeyer and listener. And so I just wanted to kind of give that little background. But thank you, Christina, for filling out. I have this form. I'll also put it in the show notes for anyone else who is interested in sharing their journey. You probably go to journeytolaunch.com/journeyer interview. I know that's long, but we'll put it in the show notes in case you also want to submit and potentially be on the show. But Christina, thank you so much for submitting. I know some people are like shy when it comes to coming on a show and talking about finances, but I appreciate you stepping out there and coming on. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for choosing me. Didn't think it would happen.
Yeah, well, so I think what drew me to your submission and what you shared in the initial form was your ability to be bold and I think increase your income by, was it like 4 times or by $40,000 over a certain period of time, over 4 years?
Yeah.
Pivoting careers and still kind of figuring it out. But I was like, okay, this is someone who I know can share. So please, let's kind of go back a little bit and tell me more about yourself, kind of like where you grew up or raised, and then how you found out about financial independence and the path you were on before finding out about financial independence.
Okay. So I am a native Floridian. I'm from Central Florida, and I was a registered dietitian in my previous life or career. I have a master's in dietetics, and I did that for about 7 years. And then might not know, but dietitians don't get paid very much. And I had student loans and was just kind of in this paycheck to paycheck cycle, working in a hospital, seeing bad medicine sometimes, and really wanting to have a greater impact on patient outcomes, but also wanting to have more ability to grow in my financial prospects in the future, and made the decision at 35 to go back to school to become a physician assistant. Applied, luckily got in the first round, which brought me to Northeast Jacksonville, did PA school, got my first job. Yes, I was grossly underpaid as a PA my first job, and they offered me like 3 to 4% raises every year. I did the math the other day, and I countered my raise every single year. So the first year they offered me 3%, and I countered with like a 10K raise, and they came back with like 7.5. And then the next year I got like, they offered me again, I think it was like 3 or 4%, which would have been like maybe $3,000 increase. And I negotiated to a $12,500 raise. I did the math the other day, and in 4 years, if I had just accepted their initial offers versus what I negotiated, I would have been making like $22,000 less by the end of that job when I left, which was just a couple months ago. I just started in a new job doing pediatric general surgery and trauma surgery at a local children's hospital here in Florida. And so as far as my FI journey, so I found Journey, it was really you. You are the person that introduced me to FIRE. And so I really, really thank you for like all the information that you've put out through your podcast. I actually heard you speak on the Financial Feminist podcast, and I was just so enthralled by your story. I love the way you talked. I loved you and your husband's like journey and what you were able to do. And I don't really love to admit this, but I was driving home in the backwoods of the Ocala National Forest from making cookies with my family down in Central Florida. And I immediately, as soon as the episode was over, went and downloaded your podcast. And the first episode I ever listened of your podcast was with J.L. Collins. It was your second, because I wanted to know about low-cost index funds. I kept hearing that term, but didn't really, and even Googled it and still really didn't understand it. And so I think I listened to your second one, and they were like, oh, well, we originally had him back on this episode. And so I was like, pause, found that episode and listened to it. And then I listened to all of your episodes from day one over probably about a 6-month period, I think, on 1.25 speed.
Me too. That's how I listen to podcasts too.
One of the episodes, I remember you saying like, oh, I can't wait to hear people say like, I was who introduced him to FIRE and you are who introduced me to FIRE. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Christina, thank you for sharing that background. That was amazing. I'm taking notes because I have so many questions.
Okay.
But I want to take it back a bit. So I think this is amazing because you started as a dietitian and you got your master's in it. So you had debt. You had student loan debt starting out in this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, what gave you, because I know there are people right now in a career that, you know, like they went to school for it. They invested the time and money and are probably in debt, but the return on that investment for their income, there's no real potential to really be really successful with it. So tell me, what made you pivot? Because did you enjoy being a dietitian? And were there other ways that you could have made more money, but once you got into the career, you said, no, this is not it. And then how do you think to go back to school now and change careers?
So I actually did have multiple jobs at one point. I still worked PRN at an old job as a dietitian. I taught a class on nutrition through the childbearing age at a local midwifery school. I even Ubered for a bit, like at the beginning of it, because I was trying to catch up on my financial background. Like I'm traditionally not a person who's great with money. I had undiagnosed ADHD until about 3 years ago. And I definitely would do the dopamine buy of, just buy something, even though I couldn't technically afford it, and wasn't always a great outcome for me. I have changed that money mindset, thankfully, to your book and your podcast and treating my ADHD. So I was just seeing these stagnant increases, barely increasing in my wage as a dietitian. And I did it for about 7.5 years, and I was bored. Like I could do all these calculations. I was seeing neonatal ICU kids, medical ICU people, and I just knew that I couldn't do that job for another 30 years. Like, I was already bored. I know myself, like, I needed something to bring me out of that. And I had a previous coworker who had gone back to school to become a PA, and I'd started seeing more of these people working in the hospital and just really interested in what they were doing. And actually, one of the big things that got me interested in the profession is I did a week-long practicum on neonatal nutrition up at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And I watched a surgical PA do a procedure at bedside. I won't get into the nitty gritty because some people get grossed out by it. But I remember thinking, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. I want to do that. I don't want to do this. It took me about 3-4 more years to get the guts to go back to school. Now I can actually do that, what that person was doing. I'm in that position, which is really exciting. And I knew that the over long-term return on investment, even though I would be going into even more debt by going back to PA school, because it's not a cheap venture in life, I knew that the ability to actually pay this off was possible with this other career. Because, I mean, even my first job being low paying, it was probably 1.8 times my salary as a dietitian. And now, I'm getting close to almost 3 times more of what I made at my last job as a dietitian.
And so what I'm hearing too is that being exposed, it's almost like that was a tangential adjacent career where in your existing career, you saw other people doing that, or you had access to the knowledge that this was a potential pathway. You knew someone who also did that and switched careers. So kind of seeing it, so having someone else model that and having access or exposure is so important, because I just think there's so many things, so many career options and things we can do with our skill sets we have. Of course, we may need more education for certain things, but that is available to anyone if they want to pursue and kind of put that extra time and money into what you did.
Yeah. And as a dietitian, I was never interested in like being like the Instagram person. I'm not a big I don't stay like consistent with posting on social media or anything like that. So I knew that wasn't the path for me in that regard.
Okay, so I think what's also important here to note is you did a level of research. You understood the potential that you'd earn as a PA and the kind of debt you'd go into. Is that correct or fair to say?
Yes, it is.
So can you talk through that? Because I think that's an important thing to do. I think, starting out, if you have the knowledge to do that in the beginning, it's important, right? Like going to school as a college student in younger years, but so many of us don't know to do that. But was there any other option for you? Did you think, well, it's either PA or there's this other career path, or was it always, the PA path is for me?
I guess I never really considered another career. I knew I wasn't going back to medical school. I was at an age that I wasn't going to do that. I wanted to continue to do something in medicine that would have a greater impact on patient outcomes, because I really do love patient care. So the next step forward with the most earning potential in my lifetime would be the PA profession. So I think that really is what stuck out to me as a potential career pivot that was easiest to do without having to do a bunch of prereqs to go back to do more schooling in order to do that.
And how did you pick the program to go to? Because I would assume there are probably a few options, a few programs at different rates or different costs, or was it pretty simple to pick the program?
Well, PA school is really competitive to get into. And so I applied to 5 or 6 different programs, and a lot of people will apply multiple rounds without ever even getting an interview or getting accepted for admission. Luckily, I did apply just one round. And when I had made the decision to go back to PA school, I actually met my husband at the very beginning of that journey. And I told him, hey, I was like, I really like you, but I'm applying to PA school. If I get in, you can go with me or you don't, but I'm not going to change my plans for you. That might sound harsh, but I wasn't going to put off my potential career change for a guy. Luckily, about 4 months into it, he was like, yeah, I'll go with you wherever you get in. And so we kind of talked about places that we would both like to live, and applied to those programs. I actually ended up getting into my backup school. So It was just more about getting in somewhere. And luckily, it was only about an hour and a half from where I lived at the time. We did have to move. He owned a house at the time, so he sold his home, and then we moved here to Jacksonville.
Okay. And then how long did that program take to finish?
27 months.
Okay. And you weren't able to work during that time? You had to just do that full time?
Yeah. I mean, you could have like a PRN job, and I did get offered a PRN job at a local rehab hospital, but the rate was so low that I couldn't justify giving up those 12 to 20 hours of studying that I really needed to be successful at my program that job would have required on the weekends.
Right. That makes sense. How quickly were you able to find a job? Because I think that's the other thing too, right? Is like you can have a degree in something, go to school for it, and then now you're looking for a job and it might take longer than expected. How did that process work for you?
So I actually did get offered a job at a local addiction medicine rehab facility while I was in school. That's where I did my psychiatric rotation. They did offer me a full-time position, but that was not something that I wanted to do really long-term. It's a very tough population to work with, so I knew it wasn't something I wanted to do full-time, but I negotiated to get a PRN job at a pretty good rate. So once I graduated, you have to take your certifying exam, which takes several weeks to get like your results back. I took it about 10 days after graduating, which was pretty quick compared to a lot of my classmates. And then you have to apply for Florida licensure, which can also take some time. So about a month after graduating, I actually got my license and I started working PRN like literally 2 days later, like that weekend at this rehab facility. So I actually didn't find another full-time position. So I graduated August of 2019. I got a full-time position February of 2020, right before the world fell apart.
Yeah.
Literally got back from my bachelorette weekend in Austin and started that like Tuesday morning at this job. And within a month, we were working from home doing telehealth because of COVID.
Right. Well, so while you were in school and you didn't didn't have as much income as you did, how were you supporting yourself? How are you making that work? Because I think that's a consideration for anyone who does want to switch careers or do something different is, okay, well, what do I do in the meantime while I'm going to school?
So unfortunately, it was student loans because that's really the way you have to do it. I mean, I did have some money saved, but not enough to get me through 27 months. My now husband did move with me. He's a software engineer. He makes pretty good money. So like my contribution to our household expenses was pretty minimal comparatively. So that was helpful. But he wasn't able to cover like all of our expenses with his salary at that time. So it was using student loans. I did get a like partial scholarship my last year through my college where it paid for half of my tuition. Usually they just give it to one student within each campus, and it got split between myself and one other student. We both won that chancellor scholarship.
Okay. So, I mean, I know that just in terms of supporting yourself but it seems like the student loans help carry you through, and then understanding that you'd had the potential to make more money, you factored that in as the cost of going back to school.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the other thing you had mentioned that you did this at 35 years old. That's when you started school or finished school?
That's when I started school.
Right.
I finished at 37.
Which is still, I mean, honestly, like 35 is still young to me. But, for some people who feel like, oh my gosh, like I'm changing careers, I'm doing something different, and it feels like they're doing it later or figuring it out later in life or further than they wanted to. It's like, it's never too late. Even in your 40s or 50s, it's never too late. So I just wanted to point that out, that you did that at an age where some people would maybe be too afraid to make a change or not, and then be stuck even further in their situation.
I think it's really important for people to just take the leap. If you're not happy where you're at, if you think that you can make more, just have the courage, the gumption to do it, because you can. I mean, I was scared. I wish I had done it sooner. It took me, like I said, like multiple years to even get up the guts to do it. And I guess my only regret is not doing it sooner, but then I probably wouldn't have met my husband. So I guess everything works out for a reason.
Right. It all worked out. The other thing that I really love about your story is your boldness and confidence to counter your, like, the raises they give you at a company. And so I'd love to kind of talk about that. How did you know to do that? How to push back, and how did you push back? Any helpful tips and things you did that you started to do that worked really well?
So I had done some research on, I guess, national pay rates for the type of work that I was doing. And with the PA profession, the American Academy of Physician Assistants, they put out an annual salary report. So I knew I was getting underpaid from the beginning. They didn't really negotiate with me or weren't willing to negotiate when I accepted the job. But I was so desperate to have a job at that point that I accepted it, unfortunately. So I knew once my annual raise came or annual review came around, that was the time to counter. So I actually made a list of all the things that I was doing about as far because I was working in the clinic at the time. So, patient satisfaction, all the different procedures that I was doing compared to other PAs and nurse practitioners at our practice, how much revenue I was bringing in, and use that to justify my increase. And even though I did have the guts to do it, I was totally nervous the entire time. I had to know that my husband and I talked that what if they say they're like, nope, we're not going to give you this. I have to be willing to walk away. Is that something that we can do? And even though it wouldn't have been ideal at the time, we did make that decision together that if I needed to walk, I could walk. I still did have my PRN job at this addiction medicine facility. So, I did have some stuff to tide me over, and I had built up a pretty good emergency fund at that point as well. So I think that kind of helped with having that guts to counter.
Hey, Journeyers, if you are loving this podcast, then you will love my book, Your Journey to Financial Freedom, a step-by-step guide to achieving wealth and happiness. I wrote this book for you. This book is for you if you want a clear and enjoyable path to having more money, options, and a rich life. This book is for you if you hate your commute and the fact that you need to seek approval or permission from a boss. I hated that when I worked. This book is for you if you weren't born into wealth, you didn't marry rich, or win the lottery, but you still want freedom. This book is for you if you're at a crossroads, a major decision or event is imminent. Maybe a career change, marriage, starting a family. Pressures are reaching a tipping point, and the discomfort and the desire for more can no longer be ignored. And this book is for you if you find yourself zoned out at meetings, looking out the window or daydreaming about the life you truly want. So go pick up yourjourneytofinancialfreedom.com so I can show you how to map out how to get from where you are today to where you ultimately want to be and enjoy the journey while you're on the path. Head over to yourjourneytofinancialfreedom.com to see where you can pick the book up. It's available on Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore, everywhere. Go to yourjourneytofinancialfreedom.com to get the book now. And I always tell people it's not that people think even having changing my career path the way I did and quitting my job or even having the podcast and doing certain things, people are like, oh, you're doing it and it doesn't seem like you're nervous or you must have had it all figured out. And I feel like most people, when I talk to them about doing something that changes their life or is putting them on a pathway, it's not that they don't have the absence of fear. It's just that they do it anyway. I just do it anyway.
I was going to have more regret not doing it than doing it is how I figured, and it's not like it was my dream job. If they did let me go, I wasn't going to cry. I was just going to be worried about getting another job.
Right. No, but I think that mindset is so key. It's so, it really is the, I think, superpower of taking risk and having the life. I think about this too. If I didn't take that risk, even if I was scared, then I wouldn't have this life that I have now. So like you said, it's worth it. It's worth it to take the risk because the alternative, it's not like you're happy in it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned, before you kind of changed careers or just in the beginning of your journey and maybe pre-knowledge of the FI world, is that you felt like you weren't traditionally good with money. Can you maybe give some differences or changes from how you used to think and where you used to be with how you are now? And what do you think helped or caused that change?
Oh yeah, I was really bad with money. Like really bad. I never had a savings account, and maybe it was because I wasn't making enough money, but I also, I love making spreadsheets, and I will, go into my little like deep dive and spend all day on making spreadsheets and then like never look at it again for budgets and things like that. So the consistency was really never there. And then, I was just tired of just kind of being in this debt spiral of like, oh, I get out of it, I get back into it. And then, listening to your podcast and some other podcasts really helped me kind of figure out that mindset. And then, like I said, I did get diagnosed with ADHD, I think about 3 years ago, and being medicated and reading about, how like a lot of people, when you're feeling down or need like a dopamine hit, you'll go online and buy stuff that you can't really afford. And that was definitely me. Like I'd have a bad day at work and I'd go order some plants online or something. I don't know. So realizing that mindset and making that shift was exponential. And then back in April of last year, I downloaded YNAB after hearing you talk about it. And it's probably the only budgeting app that I have consistently used in my entire life. And then finally understanding like giving every job $1, like understanding that, like, cause I would, put stuff out on paper and spreadsheets and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, if you're just giving it all a job, like, isn't it just mean you're living paycheck to paycheck, but not realizing that that job can be in the future. So now, like, outside of my emergency fund, I still have 2 months of expenses already covered, and I can see that easily. And like when things go from green, like, or from red to green, it makes me like so happy. And so that has helped significantly in changing that mindset as well.
Yeah, I think that having a plan and finding a system that works for you is so important. And I go back to the whole budgeting thing because quite honestly, I am not as disciplined or on my budget as I used to be. But I always say that it's a tool and something in my arsenal that if I have to get back to because, I have a goal I want to reach or there's this other thing that I want to do in a short amount of time, that I can do it. And I think that's important for people to know is that you can switch. Like if you right now don't like or foresee budgeting as your thing, that's fine. But depending on where you are in your journey, it's necessary, right? Like if you're in debt, if you're trying to invest, if you're not financially where you want to be, a budget and having a plan for your money is going to help you get a handle on all that. And as you get further down, maybe you keep up the budget and the more, I wouldn't say obsessive, but, looking at every single penny and all that. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you say, I can relax a bit because I have systems in place. It's so important, though, to in the beginning, to figure out a budgeting system and to know that it's okay if you don't get it right away and if you try multiple things.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that I like am obsessive about every single penny at this point. I am not a frugal person. My husband and I, like, when we are foodies, we've eaten at like 5 different Michelin star restaurants in the last year, 3 of them in 5 days in Chicago last May, but we budgeted for it. So our guac lifestyle on that is like a 4, maybe hitting up there on a 5. But those experiences mean a lot to us, but we just know, hey, we're not going, like, I'm going to throw it on the credit card, but I'm going to pay it off right away so I can get, I'm at least getting those points. So that mindset has definitely shifted quite a bit.
Right. And it shows if you're intentional, you can budget in anything you want. I mean, obviously there's trade-offs and things, but I think the point of this journey is to enjoy it also. And so it doesn't have to just be restrictive. Like I love that you just mentioned where you'll budget for the Michelin star stuff and anything else that really is of value to you.
Yeah. But I'm not a big like clothes person. I don't spend a lot on that, like I think otherwise like my regular expenses are pretty low, but that's just like how I am.
That makes sense. It's like guac levels, right? Like I talk about in the book or the podcast where it's like some things just like, okay, my guac level, and it doesn't have to be all the time, but for this thing, I'm going to spend money. And in other areas of my life, that's where I save some money because I don't really care about it and it's not a big expense.
Exactly. I mean, I've still been able, even with eating at a bunch of expensive Michelin star restaurants, still paid off $36,000 worth of debt since January of last year.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about the journey that you're on. So right now you said, or in the form that you filled out, that you're in debt payoff mode still.
Yeah.
But then you also said your current job is a job where you get forgiveness.
Yes. I was part of the SAVE program, so that's been paused or whatnot.
Yes, yes.
So I think part of it, I haven't actually had to make student loan payments now since that's been paused. And I've been taking that like benefit of that money that I usually budget for that and throwing it towards my consumer debt to try to get that paid off. But I just listened to your student loan pod episode, and I'll probably be, reapplying for their like income-based repayment plan so I can start getting those months of the PSLF, the forgiveness, counted.
Right, right. But it seems like you still have consumer debt and then you have the student loan debt that you're working to chip away at.
Yep.
And what's the time frame of you getting out of the consumer debt?
Oh, 6 months.
6 months left.
Yeah. All I have left is I did a balance transfer, like 0% card last year. And all I have left is that. And it's about a little under $12,000.
Right. And just for anyone, like the balance transfers, like I'm all for that, especially if you are disciplined to the point where you can pay it off before the interest rate kicks in, because you can save the, interest that you'd be paying on your credit card. So I do think that is a good strategy where you are consolidating or putting one high interest rate debt, credit card debt into a 0% credit card debt if you could pay it off before the interest rate kicks in.
I definitely think that was helpful, like not just having to pay that interest every month that was racking up on a higher card, and really helped me to get things paid off a little bit faster than originally planned.
Now, what does your FI journey, like the rest of it, look like? I know you said you have 6 months left of consumer debt, and there's going to be a strategy to deal with your student loans based on forgiveness. So that was what I'd call like being the cadet stage. And then you're going to probably quickly switch over to what I call the aviator stage. So cadet stage and my 5 junior levels are in the consumer debt payoff mode. And then the aviator stage is where you can now start to really build up assets and invest more aggressively towards your goal of financial independence. So let's talk a little bit about that, like how you're looking forward to that. How are you doing with your investments? Did you invest, or are you investing while still in debt? What is your outlook on that?
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely investing while still in debt. So at my last job, I invested up to the match, which was like 5%, and didn't really do much beyond that. But with my new job, the healthcare and everything, the premiums and everything are much, much lower. So because of that, and still kind of wanting to like play the tax game and keep my taxable income lower to help with those student loan payments when I start having to pay them again, I actually was able to double it's now a 403B, double that contribution from 5% to 10%. And my take home is still higher than it was at my last job. So I'm probably going to increase that still. So the goal is, once I pay off the rest of that consumer debt, is increasing that 403B contribution and probably trying to do a backdoor Roth, because I'm over the income limits on that.
Yeah, sounds like all the things that we were doing too, my husband and I, as we were getting and gearing up into investing more. So one of the things that we think about, or you should think about as you're listening to this too as a journeyer, is what's your FI number, right? And that is essentially like, what is the amount that you need in your investment accounts? And that will convert to passive income or investment income where you don't have to actively work again. And, that's why getting out of the consumer debt and being able to invest aggressively is important, because that's how you're going to get to the FI number. And typically it is the 25 times your annual expenses. So how far are you away from that? And do you know your number? I think you do. You had mentioned it, or I'd mentioned it. And then what are you thinking about that journey so far, like the outlook on it?
So I will be honest, I'm not exactly sure of the timeline. I'm going to download your FI Calc tool. That's been on my to-do list, but I hadn't gotten around to it, but probably this week. So I'm not exactly sure of the timeline. I mean, honestly, if I can even retire 5 years earlier than the traditional 65, I will be happy. But I think I feel more confident in my ability to do so. If you had asked me, 5 years ago, I'd be like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to retire. But I definitely think that with my change in mindset and the resources that I've learned through your podcast and others in your book, I think it's doable now. Is it going to be 10 years from now? Probably not. It might be 15, maybe I'll be 57 when when I'm able to retire, and I'm okay with that. But right now I've just transitioned to a job that I'm only working 2 or 3 days a week. So that change, and still making a little bit higher salary and having much better benefits, really it's the time aspect for me. That is what I value the most. And so being able to transition into a job that is going to allow me to have more time and a better work-life balance. I love what I do. I don't mind doing it for the foreseeable future.
I love that. I think that's honestly, that is the goal. That's almost like when I think about this audacious, never having to work again goal in a short amount of time, or at least at an earlier stage than the standard age of retirement. It's very audacious. It's very big. But what I keep telling people, and what I'm so glad someone like you is also saying, is that once you start the journey, you make these changes in your life. Ultimately, it's not necessarily about never working. It's about having the option and finding this freedom in your life where, time is our biggest asset that we cannot get back. And it sounds like you have that balance. You have that. And so ultimately, if it takes you a little bit longer, or even if it takes until the standard retirement age because you found something else in life that you want to do and enjoy and you don't mind it taking longer. I think that's the goal. That fact that you kind of have that option, though, is what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, with my new job, every 3 weeks, I get 8 days off in a row without taking any PTO. Who can beat that? I mean, granted, I'm working longer shifts and working nights, but I'm more of a night owl. It doesn't matter to me. I can do it.
So you did get the fire calc.
Yeah. Well, I haven't bought it yet. I was planning on doing it this week.
Okay, good. Because that will definitely help you to model out different scenarios and how long it could take. And so, yeah, we'll probably have to have another conversation when you get on board with that, because it was one of the things where it's hard to understand how long it's going to take, especially if you want to change your mind about certain things and maybe there's something you want to save up and purchase. So that's the other thing about the FI journey, right? Or just life. You might change your mind in a couple of years. There might be something else you want to do and pivot to that requires money. And so I just think it's important to stay flexible because you just never know. And the fire calc, when you get around to it, will be helpful for that.
Yeah, that's on the goal for later this week once I get off my 3 nights in a row.
Yeah. So, all right, Christina, this has been amazing. I mean, I think we have covered a lot of your journey. I mean, of course, we couldn't get into everything, but is there anything else you want to share? Any tips, someone listening to this and they're like, wow, I am inspired, or I want to do more. I want to kind of be where Christina is, in a couple years or few years. Are there any tips, or what would you say to that person who is listening and wants to get on it, wants to make strides on their journey?
I would say that just because you couldn't succeed in the past doesn't mean that you can't succeed in the future. I always tell patients, they, will ruminate about things. And I'm like, you can't change the things that you did in the past. You can only change your outlook from here on. So I would always say that I'm somebody who's bad with money, and I wouldn't say that anymore. And I never thought that would be something that I could say or would say. And so just believe in yourself, know that you can make a change if you want to make a change. It's never too late. We had people in their 40s and 50s in our class. You can make a change at any point in life. Just because, you might be an elder millennial like us doesn't mean that you can't do great things with your life and really start to live the life that you want to.
Right. Perfect advice. And the thing too is mindset is such an important factor in this. It's believing what you believe about yourself and your abilities, and even your failures or just setbacks matter. So I hope that this blesses someone listening, that they can also change their life, and it doesn't matter the age, and you don't have to go in to be a physician's assistant. It could be something else, but there are options for you if you stay open to opportunities, you stay open to taking chances on yourself, and you do the research, you do the work, but there's a return in pouring into yourself that way.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I love kind of the full circle moment for you, hopefully, that you've been listening, and now your voice will be added to a story that maybe someone else listening can say, you know what? Listening to Christina's episode changed my life. So thank you for being part of this journey with me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is really it's been great. And I feel very blessed and thankful for you.
Oh, thank you. Don't forget, you can get the episode show notes for this episode by going to journeytolaunch.com or click the description of wherever you're listening to this. And you can still grab your Jumpstart Guide for free to help you on your journey to financial freedom by going to journeytolaunch.com/jumpstart. If you want to support me and the podcast and love the free content and information that you get here, here are 4 ways that you can support me and the show. 1, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you listen, whether that's Apple Podcasts, that purple app on your phone, your Android device, YouTube, Spotify, wherever it is that you happen to listen, just subscribe so you are not missing an episode. And if you're happening to listen to this in Apple Podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe there. I appreciate and read every single review. Number 2, follow me on my social media accounts. I'm at Journey to Launch on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and I love, love, love interacting with journeyers there. 3, support and check out the sponsors of this show if you hear something that interests you. Sponsors are the main ways we keep the podcast lights on here, so show them some love for supporting your girl. 4, and last but not least, share this episode, this podcast with a friend or family member or coworker so that we can spread the message of Journey to Launch. All right, that's it. Until next week, keep on journeying, journeyers.